Although I actually haven't touched Elsword for quite a long time now, but that doesn't really mean I can start talking about it because over the years I actually left the game. I spend over almost the whole entire year just seeing how the game goes, how it progresses, and so far what I see from the posts, the YouTube videos, and also the subreddits, it doesn't seem as though they're doing that very well on both the Korean server and the North American server also, and that's actually quite concerning for those who actually still linger around and still playing the game, considering how much content that those players are still receiving. But while its competitors such as Soul Workers, Closers, and some other slimmer game is actually producing actual relevant content that keeps their audiences fully engaged with the storyline, or some either new content to just challenge other players if they feel like the current content is not offering them enough. But I could also pull some of the examples such as Destiny 2, who's actually just recently posted a live stream showing all the works they're currently working on, and I actually have to admit that most of the expansion content hasn't been that great. However, they're continuously to be transparent of what they're doing, such as like what's behind the background within the whole industry. They're telling them like, oh, it's like, hey, we heard your feedback, we're gonna implement it in either the next season or the next expansion. And of course, they showed like other trailers of what they're gonna work on for the next 2 or 4 years at this point, and it shows a lot of promises what a company can do these days, just to keep on continuously engaging their player base and showing them like, hey, we actually have some content for you guys for the future. If you actually going to stick around, please do. And that feeling, that's going to engage most of the audience that I see so far. And for that sort of was missing from Elsword this time, because over the past updates I've been overshadowing for the past year now, most of their updates hasn't been very engaging, as I would put it that way, besides the masterclass that they just happen to present, showing them like, hey, we're gonna continuously build up the third class as it should before, and if we were to engage some players, they're gonna have to do a certain amount of quest steps just to reach that point, and then after that they're going to have to keep grinding the exact same dungeon all over again, and they actually have to try it in the most difficult difficulty with one revive only, and majority of their stats actually gets halved by like 50% from what I saw so far, and also make the mechanic very unforgiving, so that if you don't know how to approach a certain mechanic from the boss, it would either leave you almost dead even, and that's sort of just like, what type of idea is that, just to keep engaging with the player? And I know like, is their way just to make the whole thing challenging, because most of the characters are actually geared to the point that like it's supposed to be quote unquote the best gear in the entire game, and they pour a lot of their time just to reach that point, just to only to know that if they actually go to different phases of the boss fight in hell mode, the very first phase from what I know is like they actually drop down the percentage to around 30%, and then if they actually manage to survive all the mechanics and live on to phase 2, it's going to drop their stats even further. That's going to be butchered up by like 70%, and that itself is pretty heavy on the player already, and I can't imagine myself doing those type of contents if I were to jump back to Elsword, because it's just not as challenging as I would want it as compared to all the Savage runs I actually did for Final Fantasy XIV, and that content itself is actually challenging to have everybody in the party to know what they're doing. But as compared to Elsword though, gear is sort of like a 25% factor in order to complete the Savage runs, and I know like having the best gear all this time is actually a barrier for most, because they actually have to complete the Savage overall and get cleared, and they gotta know what they're doing in terms of building up the materials, their stats, what they're looking for, and how to optimize their rotation to get the utmost DPS as possible if you're playing DPS and such. And I sort of like that system in a way, like it's not the determinant factor in order to have access to its ending content. I literally just cleared up like the very first Savage mode with like the around like 475 gear or something like that, with a really competent party that knows what they're doing, and if you actually play your role on your part, the whole entire party will succeed, and they'll all be rewarded with some system that rewards players with a token that shows them like, hey, you actually complete this dungeon, and if you're not lucky with the 2 chest rolls that actually has the loot that you're looking for, and if you didn't roll for it, do that a certain amount of times and you'll be guaranteed a piece either of a gear of accessory or weapon, depending on the tiers of savages you actually are taking. And for that, I like that system because like you can keep on doing it and start continuously improve your skills on, and potentially in a certain amount of week or so you might be lucky with it. But if not, at least you have a system that would guarantee you a gear exchange for that particular piece that you're looking for. And obviously there's no enhancement systems in Final Fantasy XIV, so once you get a hold of that weapon, you actually already have the best gear for the current expansion already. And if you actually want to compare that to Elsword, you actually have this sophisticated system that allows you to tailor the gear to what you want depending on what stats you're looking for. But the only caveat that I see about it is it's just there's a whole lot of RNG involved, and if you want to make that gear to like the utmost maximum, you would actually have to invest a lot of materials, a lot of your in-game currency such as ED, and you gotta be very lucky with your RNG too, because like each of the time you decide to open up more slots in order to put more stats to your gear, that percentage is going to keep on dropping and dropping a lot. And if you want to go to stage 21, you have a 0.2 chance of succeeding, and that's kind of very scary really. And if you actually want to consider going to that point to become the best gear ever, you can if you want to, but you just gotta shell out a lot of money just to do so. And if you actually want to show this gear off to, let's just say you want to do it on YouTube and something, that's going to be quite hard for you, right? Because like when you do these type of dungeons, actually kind of butcher your stats, and that's sort of not showing what your utmost potential that your character can do. And if you actually want to show off your character at the utmost limit, just take a dungeon that doesn't have these things, and then they can just show how much powerful it is. But for like a normal player that just like to enjoy the game, they can't really do that, because like they just want to enjoy the game for its content, and they just want to enjoy the storyline too. Just this concept of the Elsword Pride, just find the El Crystal, and sort of drifts to the point that like, hey, we're gonna go into the El Masters and just find the truth behind like what's the whole story of the calamity that the story started. And it sort of got to the point of like it kind of drifts off a bit. It's like I was super interested in like if the El party was actually going to ever decide to end their journey, or if they're actually going to find the crystal that got stolen. It just sort of just they don't want to build that story a little bit upon even further. As of the story for now, they just got back from training with the El Masters, and now they're reunited together, and they're about to take on this Henry Order that's supposed to be the antagonist of the story, and they actually want to steal the El Crystal and the Elity from the Ultranoid. And that's sort of just left out for us just to decide to see like how's this story going to go at this point and sort of such. But of course, with the current staffing on how KOG's handling the situation, such as COVID-19 crisis, and from what I've seen from their subreddit posts saying that they only been posting some item haul goodies that like requires them to buy and such, that's something that's sort of totally unacceptable for players actually have to willing to accept. And they're just there to support the project, the game, the storyline, the gameplay mechanics that it offer. When I actually started playing this game, I was so intrigued on how complex the game is, because it's not your typical traditional MMORPG game. You can actually play these characters, and they actually have their own unique moveset, their skills, and it's so unique you can actually combo like certain skills or attack just to make things a little bit more fluid and complex too. And with the new skills that's been coming out, it's sort of just like a little bit more static or rigid, and it doesn't really flow that well for the rest of the skills also. And just by seeing this, it's just not the Elsword as I remember anymore for when I actually played it back in 2012. If I can recall the very first time I actually played the game, and it's just not the same as I remember as before. And then I just don't see it actually coming back anytime soon. And of course there's no signs that it's going to be shut down, because there's still going to be players that actually still want to support the game. They'll still drop in because they put that much time into the character, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. It's going to be there for quite some time now. And even with the scandal that from what I actually heard from this subreddit post saying that like KOG in secret is actually funding this particular guild just for them just to be the most top guild as possible. I don't know the whole entire story of it, but you actually know that the point that I actually pull something off like that, and it actually cost them a lot of their Elsword YouTubers and their players also because of this scandal. And with the mediocre updates that's been going through, you can still see the trickle down of the player count is going to dwindle down over time. And I'm not sure it's gonna go to that point. It's gonna be like an empty server, and there's other discussions saying that like, oh, what if like Elsword decide to go 360 just like Final Fantasy 14 and redo the whole entire game again from the bottom up again. And if you actually want my opinion on that, that's sort of very difficult to do because there's a lot of factors when it comes to redoing the game entirely from the bottom ground up. And the director of Final Fantasy 14 and Naoki Yoshida, or aka Yoshi P, he actually took a very big risk that could either make it or break it for the game, and he already explained that like it could fail because you actually have to meet the expectation from a failing game. From when they first released it under a different director, there's a lot of problems with the game. A lot of players complain like it's not very playable, it sucks, and that's when Square Enix actually has to hire a new director that has zero experience with the game, nothing behind it, and he actually did his job just to fix the game by itself. But he already knew that like the current game he's working with is not going to work, so that's when he actually decided to take a decision, give it a risk, and give it a gamble to make Final Fantasy XIV the game as it was today. And thankfully he pulled it off, and you could see a lot of reviews commending him for doing that act. But is it very possible for Elsword to do the same thing too? And if you want my almost opinion, I don't think it's going to work because there's a lot of things that actually have to go on to pull at the same success that Naoki Yoshida actually did for Final Fantasy XIV. And several reasons that I could come up with in my head is, one, the core concept of the game is sort of just missing something to make it a complete experience. Like, I know like having the complex normal attacks, the hard attacks, and you have the skills just to weave in your skills and your attack just to make this complex combo, but I feel like they can further develop up even further just to make it a lot more unique or complex. And sometimes like they can just update the original skills just to do things a lot more bigger potency or even bigger effects also, such as they did for the skill note system. And that's sort of a good stepping stone they did before in the past. But as for now though, it's just not that good of a variety really. And if they can actually create a system that could enhance the experience that we currently have, or kind of build upon it and make it a new way just to make things a little bit more up to date, then they could pull it off. But with their staffing and then how much they're committed to the game, it's not going to happen. So their committed to the game is just not there, and if they don't have passion for the game, they don't really embrace the idea that they currently have, they're not going to have a working game that they can work with. And if their staff just doesn't want to embrace the story, and part of the experiences for MMORPG is it's not just the gameplay that would shine, it's actually the storytelling and just telling like where the player is going to go to from point A to point B, and how is your character specifically is going to affect the storyline. And for what Elsword's currently doing right now, it sort of just felt like Elsword is supposed to be the main character of it all, but you actually have these other characters too that actually has their own storyline, but their storyline doesn't really intertwine for what Elsword's going through, because his story is like very like complex. He actually is the person that holds responsible for holding L's power, and his sister Elsa is supposedly the next chosen L lady and such. And that story is already like kind of weaving in sort of engagement that us audience wants to do. And let's just take like characters like Chung, Rose, and possibly Aura too, for just throw in the mix. Their story actually has some unique ideas behind it, but it's like, how does their story intertwine, and how Elsword's story is supposed to intertwine with the rest of the party too? Is because there's no syncrecy in between them. Like, how is it they actually have their own goals, but somehow they become like more like a side character rather than a character that you can actually follow just to see their development from, you know, when you first play them for the very first time, and when you actually gradually level them up, you see how much experience that they change through their experiences, their own storyline with their classes and such. And that's great and all, but how does that really tie to the main story? And possibly my third and final reason that it wouldn't probably do so well is just that they just want money, really. They just want to cash in as much money they can get from the item mall and you can actually purchase materials in order to safeguard your weapons for either degrading or potentially breaking your weapon too, and then you actually have to invest into like repairing that weapon, which costs even more money. And despite the fact that Elsword is a free-to-play game, they gotta have their sources in order to fund game from keeping hold of their servers. They gotta pay the employees, and then they actually have to pay the corporations that wants to continue to develop the game. And obviously they just try to find ways just to, you know, keep a constant flow of cash from these undermall stuff that players have to purchase. And they're not being happy at this point, because actually like they just want to expect the company that they're paying for to make their gear better, they actually have all this money in their pockets. We expect the developers or the game company to produce bigger contests just to reflect on how much money you can pay for just to make for development content or better systems or better storytelling even. And if they're not using that money investment wisely just to make a better product for their customers, it's not going to pull off like that. Then yeah, that just concludes on my end, just mentioning all of my points and my opinions of what the current state of Elsword is. And I know there's like a lot of details that I tend to be incorrect on, because I haven't really just checked Elsword that much in terms of their current gear and such. I sort of just winged it by looking at wiki and such, but you get my point now. And Elsword is just continues to dwindle down for all their stuff they have right now, and I just can't see myself jumping back in anymore, despite like how much stuff that I actually have been through, all my content I created for it. And I do appreciate that Elsword actually brought to the point that like it's been my dedicated work that I had to go to, but the game itself is just not delivering in a way that I could continuously work on it. Like I could receive comments from my older videos, such as the lore videos. That's been probably one of my popular videos ever since I decided to quit the game. And I know there's a lot of players that's been telling me like, hey, can you do for the other classes? But if I reply to them, I just told them like, I just don't have the commitment just to do those anymore, because like I just can't come up with reasons, because I just can't put my hand into it and just do the same way as I would before. And yeah, that just really just sums up everything I have to say about the game. And of course, actually want to talk about this further, you can always comment down in the comment section and we'll probably take the discussion there. But other than that, I do appreciate you for sticking around for me, for those of you who actually are committed to being with me rather than just for the Elsword content itself. I do appreciate that. And for those who are still playing, good luck for you guys. But for those who actually already moved on already for a better game, I commend you for making the choices that you just made today. And yeah, that concludes it for the video I actually have to bring up today. And this is FFXIV, and I'll see you in the next video.